So we've cataloged every single property in the United States, 50 units and greater, every single multifamily. I know multifamily, so it's like, well, let's start with what you know. And we're looking at rental rates and maturities and the occupancy and changes in occupancy, changes in rental rates, how the subject property is doing against its submarket competitors, and then ownership behavior patterns. And we're taking all these things into account and creating a list we update the leads every month.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Stash Gelezinski. He's a partner at Nedl, a data analytics firm focused on bringing AI and machine learning to the commercial real estate industry. Helps clients optimize their portfolios and maximize their returns. He's got 15 plus years of experience in this. He's part of Capstone Apartment Partners, and he's a managing director there. But he uses that brokerage experience to build this platform called Nedl that's going to help a lot of us in the industry, especially brokers, but I think operators as well, especially eventually, to use that AI platform to narrow down that targeted list of properties that you're interested in. He's gonna dive into actually a superpower today as a broker that could help all of us in this industry that that you need to be good at, right? And there's some specific skills that are going to help you to do that. He's going to dive into that today. I wanted to back up just a little bit. We were first talking about the list. I didn't ask you really how you get that list, and how do you know, like, I guess where's a good place to start, right? I mean, we could buy lists and have thousands, tens of thousands of numbers and people, but man, that's, if we can narrow that down, our time's going to be used much better, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with defining your category, or who you're prospecting on. For me, it's Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana property owners, and you can even get more specific than that, and having specific multifamily owners, and then even more specific than that, given vintages or just affordable or what have you. But on that subject, my partners and I, so I've got aside from brokerage, which is my primary at the moment, I've been working for maybe 2 years or so on a software platform. It's called Nedl. And it came out of me using different CRMs. And what I would find is that if you are prospecting through a call list and you get an owner and they've got 20 different properties, and you say, "Hey, Mr. Owner, do you want to sell anything?" They're going to say no. But if you say, "Hey, Mr. Owner, I'm calling about Capitol Square Apartments. I have a buyer for that," or whatever your pitch is, are you interested in selling that? They're much more apt to have a specific conversation with you about that. And so out of that, I had the occasion more than I liked, or more than I like to admit, where I would be calling, doing my prospecting, and talk with somebody, and no, we're not doing anything right now. It's like, okay, great, you just being honest, doing what you can, and then all of a sudden you see a listing pop up with a competitor, or a sale transaction come through on the different websites that track those, and it's like, I just talked to that guy. Like, what am I missing? So the question was, talking about CRMs, there's a lot of data out there. And what if you could use that data, applying analytics to it to predict transactions before they occur? Being a broker, we underwrite a couple hundred deals a year. And, there are telltale signs, you might say, of when somebody is prepping a property for sale. The typical life cycle of a deal, at least somebody who's popping in and out of deals pretty quickly. So they're going to buy it. The occupancy is going to drop a little bit, but then revenue and occupancy are going to start climbing. And then, they're going to spend a lot of money on CapEx. And then 2 years to 3 years, 5 years later, they're going to want to turn around and sell it. And so, there's a number of different data providers out there. So I was like, well, what if we could use that? What if, that in conjunction with loan maturities, because that's a telltale sign of somebody's got to do something. And then even just ownership behavior patterns. Like there are certain owners that just buy and hold forever. And there are certain owners that are in and out of deals every 2 to 5 years. And so I had a friend come to me, and he happens to be a senior vice president for data and analytics at a local bank here in town. And he said, hey, my partners and I have a background in software, and we want to buy value add real estate. I was like, that's a great idea. You and everybody else. What if we did this? And I pitched him on the idea, and he came back a week later with our third partner and said, yeah, this thing has legs. And so we started slowly chipping away at it. And, we're in our pilot program phase right now. So we've got probably 15 different user groups on the platform, maybe I want to say 50 or 60 individual seat licenses. And, we're actively testing it with anticipation of being able to go to market probably sometime late in Q1 is what we're targeting. So
interesting. Well, I want to dive into Nedl and what it does, right? And it's brand new, obviously, to the listeners, and and maybe you mentioned there a little bit, these things that are needed, right, to help narrow that list down, and the things that help you to see what's going to happen almost, right, for a property. But before the sale takes place, you mentioned you just talked to that person, and all of a sudden you see something, something happened, and man, that you hate that feeling, right? And I missed it, or what happened? Why did I not see that was going to happen? And if you could have some AI or analytics, right, combined in a way that could help you see that ahead of time, that would be so helpful, right? So
yeah,
let's jump into some of that, but maybe let's take it back before even Nedl. You could dive into, and what's some of the analytics that it's important to you, Stash, when you're looking for deals, right, that are potentially going to sell. You mentioned them a little bit. Let's dive in there a little bit, and let's talk about how Nedl helps with that.
yeah. So the things that this past year, 2023, we spent a lot of time prospecting on deals that had adjustable rate mortgages or floating rate debt, with the thought that the increase in rates would cause some distress and cause owners to say, you know what, let's hit a single instead of hold out for a home run. And we spent a lot of time on that, and we just didn't find a lot of those opportunities, even though I could see what the rates were doing. Like some of these groups were signing up deals, buying deals with rate caps at, I don't know, call it 3.5%. And then with the interest rate increases, they'd be up around 8 or 9%, and the cap would burn off. And they still were holding. And, you can't call somebody and be like, hey, I know that you're having to dig into your pocket. Like that's a great way to get somebody to hang up on you. So, we just didn't see it, but the market anticipated a lot of those distress sales, and they just never really came. So, things like loan maturities, those are the best indicators of a potential sale, because somebody has to do something, right? Like there are 3 outcomes. They can pay off the debt, they can refinance it, or they can sell it. Those are the only 3 things that could happen. Or they could give the keys back. So maybe that's 4. We've looked at deals on the watch list, upcoming maturities.
Yeah, maybe even part of that, as you're building that list to find deals, right? If you're cold calling a ton, they're giving, often sellers are almost going back to the cold calling conversation a little bit. They're giving you information that you're tracking as well, right? Oh yeah, this is going to happen in September. Well, you're probably making a note to call him back
100%.
a couple months before that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've got lots of follow-up notes and even calendar events of call this guy because he said to call me, around that date. So I've
Yeah.
got a couple of those coming up next week. So
Yeah. Well, speak to how what Needle does then, as far as those things are concerned and how it helps you to find those deals.
like I mentioned, we've cataloged every single property in the United States, 50 units and greater, every single multifamily. I know multifamily, so it's like, well, let's start with what you know. And we're looking at rental rates and maturities and the occupancy and changes in occupancy, changes in rental rates, how the subject property is doing against its submarket competitors, and then ownership behavior patterns. And we're taking all these things into account and creating a list we update the leads every month. And what we found is that in back testing the formula, in 2021 we were about 44% accurate, and in 2022 in back testing the formula we were about 47% accurate. So we're calling a little less than half of the transactions that are occurring, but it's like, okay, well, if they're popping up on the radar, you at least know where to go and spend your time, as a young broker, as a mid-career, or as a established broker. And it's just then all depends on how you approach the conversation and what your level of relationship is with the owners. But then what we've also done is, say you do get somebody, and we had a guy with Capstone in our Charlotte office who is relatively newer to the investment sale business, and he was able to pull 7 different opportunities out of it within the first 2 weeks of using it, just by focusing on the leads that we were delivering. So that was a great endorsement of
For
what we're
sure.
doing.
Speak to maybe who Needle is for as well. Is it just brokerage,
Yeah.
firms, or is it okay?
So it's designed with the broker primarily in mind because I am a broker, but acquisitions people as well,
So
loan
like
brokers.
an investment firm like ours, could our acquisitions guy, use Needle as well?
100%. Yeah. And then what we're trying to do is also create a hot list of prospective buyers from the brokerage seat of, hey, here's the groups based on what they already own, either in the current submarket or similar assets, maybe in different markets that are similar, that might be interested in buying the property. And then what we want to do is take that a step further and allow you, from your seat, your pilot seat, so to speak, to say, okay, here's my portfolio. I'm interested in selling or refinancing at these levels, at these prices that we will articulate. And then further, here's a hot list for you of properties that we think you might be interested in. And you can click yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not, and provide whatever feedback that you want. And you can use the tool to go and directly prospect and go out and find those deals before anybody else. Or when that owner of the property that you said, hey, I am interested in selling, says, you know what, the property that you've identified that you're interested in buying, when that owner says, I'm interested in selling, you're going to pop up as like a verified lead or verified buyer, somebody that's said already, I'm interested in buying this property at this given price or in this given range. So that'll be beneficial for you because you can go direct to the owner, or it'll be beneficial for the owner because they can see, okay, there's 1 or 5 or 30 different groups that are, verified that have said that they are interested in acquiring my asset at this price. So that's a little bit further down on the roadmap, but that's what that was one of the things that we were working on this morning
Yeah.
on our call.
No, that's interesting. That's anytime we can narrow our focus, right, we're much more likely to have more success.
Yeah.
Right. I think about even the 50% accuracy rate. That's more than say the numbers I could just pull out of most lists, right? Or thin air, trying to just find property owners myself and
Yeah.
calling. And so that would, I mean, it's a big leg up. How does how does the system maybe speak to, how the AI works a little bit to pull that information, where it comes from, some of that?
Yeah. So we have subscribed to our primary data source. It's called Cherry. And we've spent a lot of time, smoothing that data out, so to speak. And they've got a number of different APIs that we're taking advantage of. There's some other, publicly available free APIs out there. And candidly, I don't know. I don't know exactly how the sausage is made, which is probably good. But because I speak broker, I don't speak data scientist. I'm figuring it out a little bit, but that's why I have my partners for this.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're taking all these different pieces of data in. Each property has a formula that's being run on it that you might think of that's ranking it. And so each property we're ranking as hot, warm, or cold, mostly, or we're ranking a data set of hot, warm, and cold leads. And what I've found, especially early on when we were testing it, is they would just give me, an Excel spreadsheet of 20 deals in my market. And what was so interesting is that like 7 of them would be either listed, we were underwriting, they were under contract, they were listed by somebody else, they were listed by us, like they were actively in play. And I was like, this is awesome. And then the other ones just weren't there, but it's like, okay, great. So that was kind of proof of concept that we were onto something. But to tie into the cold calling, what we're aiming to do with Nedl is not only be a value add, because like when I was first getting back in my day, I literally didn't have any of the data subscriptions, so I just had the auditor's site, and I had to look everybody up online, and you would have to make 100, sometimes 200 calls a day to hit your conversation goals. Because the back to cold calling, I still try and hit 50 solid conversations a week, which is 10 a day during a typical work week. So it's like, if you can do that, you're going to be all right. But what we're trying to do with Nedl is identify the opportunities to go out and be in front of, so that hopefully you don't have to have 200 calls. Hopefully you can have 50 calls, or maybe 20 calls to get the deal flow that you're seeking. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge with, either Nedl or how you all are finding deals, or, right now?
This past year in particular, 2023, we found that the average spread between buyer and seller expectations, and I'll quantify the buyer expectations as our optimistic pricing. So when we value a deal, we're coming up with a, conservative, mid-range, and optimistic. And the optimistic is usually like the high end of reasonable. So our average spread between that was about 20% between the optimistic, which is what we thought was high, and then the seller's expectations. So they were 20% above us. So just bridging that gap and having that spread of interest rates was a challenge. We were finding a bunch of opportunities. It's just that we were too far apart. And I'm hopeful that with the change in interest rates, that we'll be able to narrow that spread a little bit and be able to pop off some more deals. So that's been the biggest challenge, is not necessarily finding opportunities, because it's like, we're out there, people know who we are, they know that we're credible, they know that we're not going to pull their leg, so they'll talk with us. But the problem is that their expectations are so much higher than where the market is. That's like, what are you going to do? Like, for instance, we had one deal that we were at like 25, 26, and he's like, I'm at 30. I'm a seller at 30. And I know that's higher than where the market is, but that just is where I have to be. And I don't have to sell it right now. It's like, all right, well, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for playing.
Well, with that being said, it's interesting. So, I mean, I hear that as well. As we make offers or whatnot, right? Well, I don't have to sell. This is where it has to be to buy it and whatnot. Well, often that doesn't work for us,
Yeah.
to make that happen. And so, with that being said, Sash, what predictions do you have for just the real estate economy and market, over the next 6, 12, 18 months? Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think that the economy and the larger real estate market will probably improve. And what I mean by that is that prices and buyer and seller expectation is going to narrow because the Fed is indicating that they are going to lower interest rates up to 3 times. And if I was speculating, I would, which I am right now, purely speculating, I think that they'll probably do quarter point decreases at the tail end of the first, second, and third quarter, because that will drop us down a little bit by the time the election comes. I'm not trying to get political, but it is an election year. So it's like those things tend to be tied. And so I think that that's what's going to happen. I think that maybe the front end of 2024 will still be a little challenging, but we have seen the 10-year come down pretty significantly. Just I didn't check it today, but so that's a positive thing, in anticipation. So I think that that is how the general real estate market is going to happen. And then as it relates to technology and things like Nedl, I do think that other tools like this, be it the one that we're creating or maybe ones that competitors are creating, I think they're going to, you might say, augment the brokers or the deal makers process and hopefully make them more efficient in what they're trying to do. That's what we're aiming to do.
On the flip side of that, what's a way you all have improved, recently or improved your business? And it could be on brokerage or at Needle, but some way that could apply to, the listeners. And
It's a good question because it's like a loaded question because there's a lot of ways. The guy I was when I first got started is very different from the guy I am now. I think being, thoughtful and making sure that you do your best to understand the drivers of a deal, for instance, if we're talking about brokerage, and why somebody may or may not be interested in selling, trying to understand those motivating factors. That's good. A book that we read as a firm at Capstone was called Emotional Intelligence. And that was a great one. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or listen to it, but it was, for me, it was, oh, that makes sense. I had a couple of those moments. I was like, oh, so, just identifying some of those triggers or other things in your life that it puts a name to
I
it.
was looking it up because I know I knew I'd heard of it and I thought that I had read it, but I have not.
So that's a good one. I think that's helped me improve. It's on my list I listen to books, so it's on my list to listen to again. I just haven't yet.
No, that's awesome. I'll definitely put it on mine as well. What's your best advice for passive investors right now?
Make sure you really understand the sponsor that you're getting into bed with. Um, and make sure you understand the deal and the metrics by which that deal is going to be governed. And what I mean by that is, well, let's talk about first the sponsor, because it seems like everybody and their brother got into the real estate syndication practice over the past couple of years, call it 5 or 10 years even. Um, and, for a while there, it was really tough to screw a deal up. But, with the changing of interest rates, it has become more challenging, and you really have to understand the operations of things. So I think make sure you understand the submarket, make sure you understand and the rents and the levels and where your sponsor is projecting those rents to be. And, the question is, does it have to make sense to you? Not necessarily, because rents have continued to go up, but can you see a path, right? Like it's not necessarily for you to live there as an apartment investor, but can you see a path to get, like, if your average rents are at 700 and they're saying we're going to give them to 1200, well, how are you going to do that? Are you actually going to put 12,000 a unit into it? Because if you are, well, then that probably makes sense. But if you're just going to do, a coat of paint and maybe change the flooring, I don't know. That's tough. I've heard of a number of sponsors who are, well publicized having to pause distributions. And that's not a good look. Neither are capital calls. So just make sure you understand what their track record is as a passive investor.
Yeah, no, that's a good advice, especially understanding their track record. Yeah, many are pausing distributions, and I'm a lot more comfortable with that than I am capital calls,
Yeah.
uh, depending on the reason, right?
Yeah.
But Stash, what would you say is the most important metrics you track? It could be personally or professionally.
So the metrics, personally, I like to get a workout in every day. And so that's like, it's not necessarily a metric, but it kind of is,
Hmm.
because it's like I 5, 6 days a week, I'm getting a good workout in. And that for me is really important, really helps my mental health, my just well-being overall. And then I guess you could get into things with family. You want to make sure that you're going, like if you have kids, you want to make sure that you're going to, you don't necessarily have to go to all of their games, but you should make an effort to go to most of them. And so I try and do that. And the ones that I miss, I'm like, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there. It was at 3:30 in the afternoon. Like, I can't do that. Come on. But so things like that. And then, being a good husband, telling your wife that you love her. That's a good metric. And then professionally, it's, have I brought in my quota of opportunities this week or month or year, right? Or quarter. So those are and then, am I doing a good job to prepare for those opportunities as they've come in? Like, am I spending time to practice the pitch? Do I really understand the pitch? Do I really understand the client's motivations, and what they're trying to accomplish? Do I feel like I have the best story? If not, what can I do to improve that? And that's working with the team. Like, I've got 2 other senior brokers that I've been with for about 10 years. It'll be 10 years in 2024, actually. And then we've got a couple of junior brokers that are with us, and we have an analyst. So we have a whole team here, and it's really making sure that you work well together as a team and having everybody row the boat in the same direction, first of all, but, from the seat at which they're best positioned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that the first couple things you mentioned were around the kids and being a good husband, the wife, even the metric of telling your wife you love her. I thought that was I love that when us busy businessmen, entrepreneurs, or whatever it may be, right? We're so focused on that success, in the workplace that we forget that we're trying to be successful at home. The reason we say we're doing all those things, right?
Right.
And so I appreciate, you mentioning that because it's not often what's said when I ask that question. So I appreciate that very much. Stash, how do you like to give back?
Honestly, my favorite way of giving back was coaching. I coached lacrosse for probably 6 years, and that was so rewarding to see those kids. Selfishly, it was my son's team, so like that I was doing it to spend time with him, but you also got to see all the other kids on the team and see them improve as a skill set and as uh, team members and team players. From picking up ground balls and catching and throwing to running complex plays, and um, so that's the best way that I like to give back. And then, I'm involved with the church that we go to. And then there's a number of charities that we support as well. So
Awesome. Well, Stash, I'm thankful for how you've given back to us and diving into at least one of your superpowers, which I think is very important in our industry and almost in any business as well. But then dialing in to finding deals and some of the things that are important and how the software you all are creating can help with that. Because man, you need to be able to call at the right time, right? And if we don't have the
Sure.
proper information, it may not be the right time, or maybe, unfortunately, like you talked about, too late. And so,
Yeah.
just raising our awareness around Nedl and the information that, software, a piece of software like that can help us with, specifically that one that you all are working hard to create and improve. So tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you, learn more about you, and how they can learn more about Nedl.
Yeah. So Nedl's website is nedl.us. And if you want to see a demo, you just scroll to the bottom and there's a contact us form. It comes to me. My email for Nedl is stash@nedl.us, nedl.us. And then if you want to talk to me about brokerage deals, Capstone-Companies is our website. And my email is stash@capstone-companies.com. And it's STASH in all of those instances. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. And then once we establish email contact, I'll give you my cell phone and every other way to get in touch with me. So
thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.